Okay, now we're going to go live for our Women's Day 2022 event. All right. All right, so we'll get started with our speaker series for today. So I want to welcome everybody to our 6th annual International Women's Day celebration for the I Love Me campaign. My name is Cassandra, and I'm the founder of I Love Me Campaign Canada. We're so happy that you could join us today for our speaker series. Today we will be celebrating International Women's Day, and we'll also be talking about women's mental health. This day is very special to all of us within our campaign because 6 years ago, our campaign was founded. And that was with the vision to provide free mental health education to women and teen girls through this self-love campaign. Throughout the past 6 years, we have reached thousands of girls and women across Canada and provided free mental health education, learning events, and spreading self-love and kindness messaging online, on campus, and in all different types of organizations in sport and community-based settings. Our team in Newfoundland has grown exponentially over the past few years. We originally started just in Ottawa, but we've got a really great core team in Newfoundland at Memorial University there. And we now have large groups of individuals who support our work in both Ottawa and Newfoundland. So now our workshops are reaching across Canada as well virtually in this new real kind of virtual world that we've all become adapted to. And so this year's event is co-hosted with Ottawa and the Newfoundland team. And so we also have Amber, who's going to be lead coordinating today for Newfoundland. And so just wanted to say hello to Amber and thanks for really helping out with all of the work as well as with Kayla. And so I'm speaking to you today from Ottawa, and our next 2 speakers will also be from Newfoundland as well. So we've got kind of a mix of everybody. Okay, so we would also like to start just by making a land acknowledgement for the Aboriginal land that we are participating our event on today across Canada. We also want to say that today is an inclusive event, and so our programming is primarily focused on the mental health needs of women and people who identify in their gender as women. But we also always say everybody is welcome. There's lots of valuable insight to learn as well, and everyone is included. And we're welcoming you all to participate and share your thoughts. So we will be recording this event, and our recording will be added to our Facebook page shortly after this live event, and we'll also upload it as well to our YouTube channel. We welcome you to share it with your network or your social circle if you find anything helpful that you want anyone else to be aware of or participate in. So the program of events for today is that we are having a speaker series of 3 speakers. So I will be speaking to you first about the impact of the pandemic on women's mental health and ways to cope. Then we will have Julie Dwyer, who will be doing a mindfulness session. Her mindfulness session will be starting at 12:30 EST and 2 o'clock NST. Her practice will invite us to slow down, breathe, and observe our inner experience during this interactive session. We will break down what exactly mindfulness is and how it works and how we can weave it into our daily lives. Our third speaker will be Kalyn Fridgeon. She will be talking from 1 o'clock EST and at 2:30 NST. She'll be talking about a journey within the mental health system and non-traditional self-help resources for students. So we'll also be doing some giveaways. So we'll be asking for participation in our 2 self-love themed draws for today. So we'll be starting our first giveaway participation now. So what I'll be asking you to do to enter is that while I'm talking within that kind of 20-minute period that I'll be chatting, you're going to have some time to write a comment on Facebook to us or send us a message, however it is that you want to share it. But we really want to hear from you and understand, what does self-love mean to you? And so our first draw for this is going to be probably around 12:25, 12:30, right around the time that I'll be ending my speaking. And so our first prize is going to be a $30 Sage Natural Wellness gift card. So that'll be an electronic gift card that we can email to you. So we'll also need your email. And if you're the winner, then Amber's going to be able to reach out to you and grab your email so that we can send that to you electronically so that you can use that and kind of treat yourself to a sort of self-loving, self-care moment with Sage Natural Wellness. It's going to be electronic so that no matter where you are in Canada, you're eligible to join. And so Amber will be announcing that at the end of my talk. So again, the question is, what does self-love mean to you? So how do you define that? How do you internalize it? What does that look like for you? Every year, we also collect donations on Women's Day. So for our programming, and so for anywhere across Canada, you can donate to help us provide free mental health education to girls and women in schools, universities, community settings by visiting our website at www.ilmcampaign.com and clicking the donate PayPal button. You can make a credit card donation or you can use your PayPal account. If you would also like to, you can send an e-transfer donation and those can be sent to hello@ilmcampaign.com. We'll share the direct link to our PayPal donation page on our chat, and we appreciate everybody's support today. We always have a wonderful, really response from donations today, and a lot of those donations go into our programming for the year. And so your support is really appreciated, needed, and really used for good causes. Okay. So now we'll kind of just hop into my first talk. And so I'll be talking to you today about the impact of the pandemic on women's mental health. So a bit about my background. So I'm a registered psychotherapist at my clinic Senta Counseling Services in Ottawa, Ontario. I supervise a team of 5 other women at our clinic here, and our focus is really on women's mental health across the lifespan. Our campaign was founded based on a bridge between my work as a psychotherapist and my experience with my clients, especially the young teen girls that I was seeing, and my own experiences as an adolescent and young woman growing up and facing the challenges that the world brings to us. I really noticed that there was a gap in terms of knowing how to develop better self-love and better self-esteem and how to cope with mental health in settings where teens really were, right? Spending time at school or in camps or in sport and this sort of thing. So I really felt that we need to do more as women, as a society, to support our young girls and young adult women, to really learn from a young age what it means to love themselves and to take care of themselves. And so a really big part of our campaign was creating that mental health curriculum that we use in schools and providing our free mental health education program. And our campaign expanded since those early days of the mental health curriculum program to include women of all ages. And we do a lot of work as well for students on campus and really reaching out to students to support them during the stressful times they experience as well. And so today's talk is really informed through my education and research experience in psychology, my experiences with our clients at our mental health clinic, as well as my own lived experiences as a woman. So this year's theme for Women's Day is Break the Bias, which the International Women's Day group defines as imagining a world that is gender equal, a world that is free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge women's equality. Collectively, we can all break the bias, celebrate women's achievement, raise awareness against bias, and take action for equality. Women can often have it harder in many domains, right? And so, whether it's work, school, and home life, which can lead to further difficulties and stress in their mental health. Women are more vulnerable to mental illness than men. Women have been at a particular disadvantage during the pandemic by nature of being a woman in a world that is already biased towards women. We also are seeing a double bias if you're a woman of color, are disabled, or part of the LGBTQ plus community. So there's many ways that the pandemic has impacted women in a way that has created a more difficult experience for them during this time. So I'm going to cover kind of different domains of how the pandemic has impacted women. So there's more demands on mothers who have at many times had to balance multiple roles. They've had to be teacher, childcare provider, mother, and a worker or an employer, whatever it is that they do. Maybe it's also student. But due to things like school closures and daycare closures, there's been an exponential demand on the amount of unpaid care and work that they are doing than perhaps maybe they were doing before when they were wearing maybe just one hat on during the day. Women who are pregnant, postpartum, or have miscarried during the pandemic are more at risk for mental health issues. Women experiencing intimate partner violence have increased risk, and we're seeing more reports of that. The Center for Addiction and Mental Health and Delvinia tracks pandemic mental health and substance use, and some of their findings were quite interesting. So they have found that nearly 25% of women indicated experiencing moderate to severe anxiety, significantly higher than the 17.9% that was reported by men. Huge, huge shift there in terms of how much anxiety women are reporting. The same gender gap was true in reports of loneliness. Women are feeling a lot more lonely. We're also seeing increased hypervigilant and fear-based thinking. It's really putting us on edge. Overall, they also found that parents with children under 18 living in their home were more likely to feel depressed and overwhelmed than adults without parents. So there's a significant difference there. So difference between 29% and 18% reported by non-parents. At this point, now that things have been going on for many years, we're seeing a lot of burnout for women in terms of chronic stress due to the pandemic. So we're seeing a huge rise in the last couple months on how much more burnout they are experiencing. People needing to take more sick leave, people needing to take leave from school, or leaving their jobs altogether. And this is really important to note that there is so much burnout, and it's a kind of note for all of us as women to really make sure that we're checking in on each other at this point and checking in and noticing the signs of burnout in our loved ones and our family and the women around us. We're also seeing a lot of disadvantages and changes for women socially because of COVID-19. The challenges that have come about lately in friendships or workplaces where values are different with opinions around the pandemic, politics, and political decision making and vaccination policies. A lot of these can cause rifts in social relationships. There's been more feelings of isolation due to the decreased social support and connection, as well as strains on friendships and close relationships, partner relationships where we're spending 24/7 together and everybody's under stress or this sort of thing, increased time with roommates as well. So our social relationships have been impacted. This is a very significant problem because as women in particular, but all humans, we are wired as social beings and we really do rely on social support for our well-being. And the pandemic has just so greatly impacted that it really does put our mental health at a disadvantage. Women in the workplace have also been greatly impacted. Because women represent the majority of workers in the healthcare field, there are some studies that have been shown that, in fact, women are at greater risk of contracting COVID-19 and the emotional toll that has come with that over the past few years. So they have more stress because they feel that their risk is more real and more prominent for them. Also, industries that have employed women primarily have been impacted greatly, again, leading to more stress. We're thinking about industry as well, like teaching or nursing, where we see predominantly women workers. They've been significantly impacted. There's also a greater burden on women who are self-employed or small business owners who have less time for themselves and their work due to increased demands elsewhere. There's double challenges and microaggressions on women of color, LGBTQ+, or with disabilities. There's a really important study that's being done right now, an ongoing study over the past 7 years called Women in the Workplace. And this really takes a look at corporate America and what things are looking at there. And this is conducted by McKinsey in partnership with the leanin.org organization. And they take a good look at representation for women and what that looks like. And so what they're noticing is that across all levels since 2022, the corporate pipeline has improved in terms of better representation for women. And so we are seeing a shift in that bias with so much awareness going on over the past couple of years. But they are seeing consistent gaps still in terms of the sort of first step up. Yes, we're seeing more women in the first steps, but into the managerial positions, we're still not seeing that it's equitable. And we're also seeing that women of color lose ground in representation at every level. They have been noticing over the past year that women are more burned out now than ever. And burnout is escalating much faster amongst women than men in industry. 1 in 3 women say that they have considered downshifting their career or leaving the workforce this year, compared with 1 in 4 who said this only a few months into the pandemic. Despite this added stress and exhaustion, women are rising to the moment as strong leaders and taking on extra work with this, compared with men at the same level. Women are doing more to support their teams and advance diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Although they're not always recognized for this, is what the study is showing. They are still kind of digging deep and finding the power within themselves to do that and to push forward during this difficult time. So we have it tough, right? There's been a lot going on for us. There's a lot on our plate right now. So the next point that I want to make is talking about how resilient we are as women and how we do have the capacity to move through this. Women are more resilient and we tend to be more open to self-reflection, growth, and doing things differently, like attending therapy or opening up to friends. We are nurturers, which means we know how to nurture and we can practice to turn that self-nurturing inward to take care of ourselves. We're social beings, and social connection is protective for anxiety and depression, meaning we know how to rely on others and we like to. We presently are living in a culture that is shedding more light on women's needs, and women are becoming more open to putting their needs first. And we're change makers who come together and we get things done and we come together and we strengthen each other and we empower each other through hard times. So I know that we can get through this and come out stronger. So the last part of my talk today is talking about, well, how do we cope with these challenges that we're experiencing? How do we increase our capacity for self-love and practice more self-care? So I've created my 4 S's for survival for women during the pandemic. So we're going to take a look at what those 4 S's are. So we have self-care, simplify, self-love, and socially connect. This is what I want you to kind of take home from today in terms of improving coping and continuing to stay strong during this pandemic. So my first element of what I recommend for increasing your ability to cope is self-care. So we've just talked about how as women, we now have so many more demands on ourselves, but self-care is still critical and we need to make time for it. So I know that's tough because we're saying we don't have time, there's too much on our plate, but it really still is the pathway forward. So there has to be even just a tiny bit of time that we do make for ourselves. And I like that to look like, what do I do each day to take care of myself in tiny ways? And what do I do each week in more significant and more restorative ways? And so my idea is I'll kind of give you what that looks like, right? And so it's trying to get into habit of, okay, so what can I do just for a few minutes each day? So I would pick 3 options for yourself that could be your kind of go-to for the next couple months or something. So some good options of daily self-care check-ins are a little bit of physical activity. So going for a short walk, journaling for 10 minutes, or texting a friend to socially connect. And then I would pick 1 or 2 bigger self-care goals that you can schedule in each week. So literally looking at your planner and your calendar, that for me is really big. I actually schedule in my self-care into my weekly planner. And that will look like something like, okay, I'm going to attend that yoga class that I like with that teacher on Thursday evenings this week because I know I've got some extra time to do that. Maybe it's planning a dinner with a friend, getting a massage, or something where you actually book it in or plan it in. And I recommend you do maybe about 2 of those each week. So something that you can do each day for a few minutes and maybe 2 bigger moments of self-care during your week. So my daily routine right now looks like the kind of ones that I'm focusing on is just pausing throughout the day 1 or 2 times and taking 3 mindful deep breaths just to kind of change that busy sort of energy that I have going on right now. I'm reading a lot for self-care, so reading things that aren't clinical or academic or that I have to, just reading lighthearted things that really help me have that healthy distraction. And for myself as well, that looks like sitting down each day and journaling a little bit or planning for my week and what I want that to look like and setting those intentions. My weekly self-care routine will usually look like actually scheduling in, okay, what day, 1 or 2 days this week, can I make an effort to work out and actually carve out an hour to exercise? Maybe it looks like trying a new recipe. So when am I going to go to the grocery store and get the food for that? And what recipe will that be? Or doing an activity out of the house with my family. You definitely get bonus points for self-care if it's outside because nature is very good and restorative for our system and we need that more. And so if your self-care can be outside, so if it's like, oh, I journaled today, but I did it on the porch, you're going to even get that extra dose of self-care. So my next S, number 2, is simplify. So as we just talked about, the research is showing that we're doing too much. There's too much on our plate and we're taking on too much on our shoulders as women. A lot of stress and depression is related to unhappiness and feeling overwhelmed by our roles as women or the demands in our life. But oftentimes, these demands and pressures can be self pressure. And if they are self pressure and there may be things that I'm telling myself that I have to do, then that actually also means that they're in your control to change. And so, making a plan to make some changes for how you can take maybe just one thing that you can kind of delegate, or even if it's something small that you can share responsibility for with somebody else, possibly like a household task with a partner or roommate or a co-parent, or maybe some way that you can set a better boundary at work. Maybe it's just that I have to say no to that one thing this week, and that's what I could do this week to simplify. And as women, our voice is our power. And so speaking up is usually the pathway to find really those ways to simplify those demands in your life, because it usually has a lot to do with speaking up and setting those boundaries. So simplify is number 2. Number 3 is self-love. So this is my next S for survival during the pandemic. The way that we treat ourselves, and in particular, the way that we speak to ourselves, plays a big role in our personal capacity for self-love. So being gentle and kind to ourselves in our self-talk and appreciating ourselves as women has never been more important. Monitoring your self-talk, and if it sounds harsh or critical or just flat out mean, shift it to sound more like something you would say to your best friend or somebody that you really love and care about. So turning the kindness that we so freely give to other people towards ourselves is my tip for self-love. The fourth S, and quite possibly the most important at this stage during the pandemic, is increasing our social connection. Social connection is so critical to our well being and our mental health. And in particular, as women, we are completely wired to need other people to survive. And it really makes the tough times a little bit lighter for us, and we need each other. One of the most resounding things I've heard from clients at my clinic is at this stage is how hard social isolation has been during this pandemic and how significant of an impact it has had, especially for young people who take so much, really joy and meaning and value from social connections at a young age. To kind of be cut off from that, not being able to go to school, not being able to see friends for safety reasons. It's been really, really tough on our teens to not be able to have that. And to really have that is a key component to good mental health. And so I really would say that making that time to build in connection, again, if you can get outside, double bonus, you're going to really get those two kind of factors. Doing something outside, trying something new with a friend. And even if you're not feeling so great and it's hard to like talk and catch up, or there's self pressure that comes with that, because really a lot of us are in some ways like losing some of our social skills, and it can feel awkward to reconnect again. But really being able to just do anything, if maybe it's like going to a movie so that it kind of takes the edge off or the pressure off of you, just to kind of get accustomed again. And so just planning something like just light and fun that you can do. And so that could look like, catching up with tea on Zoom. That can look like trying something new together, or a new restaurant that's opening up, going for a walk outside together and incorporating other forms of self care. But we need each other. And if there's one takeaway that you take from these 4 coping strategies, if there's only going to be one thing that you do this week, I say reach out to a friend or a loved one. So those are my 4 S's for surviving the rest of the pandemic as women: self-care, simplify, self-love, and social connection. So I hope that you find these tips helpful, and I wish you good luck and good health as you move through the rest of this pandemic, and we stay united and empowered as women together. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Amber for a moment, who will be taking a look at our giveaway winner and making that announcement through the random draw.
Okay, thanks, Cassandra. Thank you to everyone that commented on our Facebook Live page. So our lucky winner for the $30 Sage Natural Wellness gift card is Sarah Walsh. So congrats, Sarah, and I will be in contact with you by messenger shortly. Okay, so next we're going to have our second draw, and this is going to be for a $30 Sephora gift card. So to participate in this draw, we are asking our viewers to comment on the Facebook Live page, how do you practice self-care? And this draw will be announced at 12:55 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:25, 2:30 p.m. Newfoundland Standard Time. Awesome.
Okay, thanks, Amber. So now I'd like to introduce Julie, who is our next speaker. So Julie has been studying and practicing mindfulness and meditation for over a decade. She is the owner of Ease, an evidence-based approach to wellness and mental performance. Julie holds an M.Sc in clinical psychology from the University of Edinburgh and is currently completing a PhD at Memorial University in experimental psychology. Her research concentration is in health and wellness. Julie runs, bakes, and loves to read. Julie will be leading a mindfulness session. This practice invites us to slow down, breathe, and observe our inner experience. Practicing mindfulness can give us the tools we need to stay calm, remain focused, and reduce distracting stressors and negative thoughts. During this interactive session, we will break down what exactly mindfulness is, how it works, and how we can weave it into our daily lives. So please join us in welcoming Julie for our mindfulness session, and we're all excited to chill and unwind together.
Thank you for having me. So you can hear me. Is that right? Good. Okay. So I'm Julie. So that was a pretty good intro. So I'm going to talk to you today about mindfulness, what it is, how we use it, and I'm going to guide you through a quick practice so we can do it together. However, before we get into that, I thought it might be beneficial to kind of just really give a breakdown of what it is. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can follow along. So, oh, no, I can't share my screen. That's okay. I don't need to share it. I can just talk you through it. But basically, mindfulness is about paying attention in a particular way. So paying attention on purpose, without judgment, without criticism. It's about meeting ourselves exactly where we are, through the good, the bad, the ugly, and using curiosity rather than comparison, using compassion rather than self-criticism. So the meditation that we're actually going to do today is going to be a self-compassion meditation. But ultimately, mindfulness has become quite a buzzword over, the past few years now, which is great. Social media, the news, we're hearing a lot about it. Unfortunately, with that sometimes comes a little bit of misinformation. So just to really break down what it is, at its simplest, mindfulness is about being present to the here and now. So it's about noticing emotions, thoughts, feelings, even physical sensations without judging them, without rejecting them, without clinging to them. And that allows us to stay in the present moment. So ultimately, it's about learning to accept our reality as it is and doing the best we can with what that brings us. So easier said than done. And acceptance can be a really tricky part of that definition because what if it's something that we don't like? Acceptance doesn't mean that we have to like our reality. If we think back on the past couple of years now, a pandemic, a lot of cancellations, a lot of closures, all these, unforeseen things that we really had no control over. Accepting some of that stuff is challenging, but rather than, thinking about it as liking it, we can reframe it and think about it as simply making space for the uncomfortable. So making space for uncomfortable feelings, whether that's jealousy, anger, sadness, things we don't like to feel, making space for, uncomfortable sensations, urges, emotions, thoughts. So Now that we've talked a little bit about what mindfulness is, let's just briefly touch on what it is not, and we can bust a couple of myths here. So the opposite of mindfulness is mindlessness. And this is something we are extremely good at as women, as people. We're go, go, go. We're constantly trying to get the next thing done on our to-do list, to take care of our people, and we're just constantly going. So it's kind of like being in that, robotic, automatic autopilot mode where we're not really present. We're missing the vividness of the present moment because we're constantly thinking about planning what's coming next. Okay, you're not here because you're worrying about what's happening in an hour or what happened this morning that you could have did differently. And so then we miss it. We miss the magic of being right here. So then when we practice mindfulness, what we're doing is cultivating, that present moment awareness. But so to go to these myths now, that mindfulness and relaxation are not the same thing. So when I guide you through this practice now in a few moments, hopefully you'll feel relaxed. Many people report feeling relaxed as a consequence of practicing mindfulness, but they're not necessarily one and the same thing. Mindfulness meditation, it's not about emptying your mind of thoughts. And you'll see this when we do this practice, thoughts are going to come and go. And that's part of the practice. You're never going to get to a place where you have this magic ability to empty your mind of thoughts. We are living, breathing, thinking humans. And a study recently out of Queen's in Ontario, some researchers out of that university recently noted that the human brain average each day has about 7,000 thoughts, sometimes a little bit more. So about 7,000 thoughts. So if we're only awake for 14 hours and we have 7,000 thoughts during that period, if you allow yourself to get tangled up in every one of those thoughts, you start telling your story to yourself about this thought, it can take up a lot of time. You'd spend most of your day trapped, caught up, spiraling in your own head if we gave every single thought our attention. So rather than emptying our mind of thoughts and reaching this clarity moment where we have no thoughts, mindfulness is actually about simply changing the relationship that we have with our thoughts. We're not the authors of our thoughts. We don't control what comes up. However, we do have the choice to control how we react to those thoughts. So that's what we're going to be doing together today. Another misconception about mindfulness is that it's positive thinking, that it's this blanket term, good vibes only, positive thinking. So while I think these phrases are well-meaning, sometimes we can get into the realm of toxic positivity when we talk about some of these things, because the human experience, as we are all aware, encompasses such a huge spectrum of emotions. And only focusing on the positive and the good stuff, we miss all the other stuff. And it's all equally impermanent. And mindfulness is about making space for all of the things that come up on the entire spectrum and embracing all of our feelings, all types of our thinking. Oh, thank you. I just got that message. I'll share my screen here now so you can follow along. Okay, we'll start from exactly right here. Play from current. Okay. And then the last misconception there is that this idea that mindfulness is a religious or a spiritual practice. So that can be true. If you'd like some information on mindfulness as a religious or spiritual practice, I'm happy to send that information out. So please let me know. The lens I'm taking with this chat today and the lens of my research in the past 10 years of working in academics and clinical work has been more of a clinical and scientific lens. So it doesn't have to be. There are a lot of mindfulness traditions and a lot of religious traditions dating back hundreds and thousands of years that have meditative aspects, but that isn't the approach that I'm taking today. However, again, if that's something you're interested in, I'm happy to send you in that direction. So I already touched on this, that we're really good at behaving like robots, just hustling from one thing to the next thing, constantly in that mode of doing. So in terms of the principles of mindfulness. Mindfulness promotes bodily awareness. So of our sensations, of our thoughts, of our feelings, of our, all of these experiences. And then with practice, it allows us to learn to view unwanted thoughts. So unwanted feelings, things we don't like feeling, as simply passing mental events. So rather than trying to get rid of them altogether, you can imagine for a second that you're lying on your back, looking up at the sky, watching clouds come. You did it when you're younger, maybe you've done it recently, where you point out the shapes and, they're drifting, and before you know it, there's new clouds coming and going. That's how we want to view our thoughts and our feelings, as simply things that come and go that we cannot control, but that we can interact with in a healthy way, so we can give ourselves really good coping strategies and have tools in our toolbox. So when things get overwhelming, we have the ability to cope with them a little bit better. So mindfulness then allows us to choose where we place our attention. And, that's about being present to the here and now, even if the here and now is like not so great. It's about, being present for whatever it is, whether it's good or bad. So there's a slew of benefits to practicing mindfulness, as you can see on the screen here. But ultimately, one of my favorite things about it is that it makes us less judgmental, which, it's great to be less judgmental towards other people. Absolutely. But most people are their own worst enemy, especially as girls, especially as women. We sometimes are so hard on ourselves and we can be really critical. So mindfulness, with some practice, allows us to learn to view our own experiences with less judgment. So we can observe them objectively without getting down on ourselves. If you're going through a breakup and you're feeling really upset and down and having a rough go, and then you're getting mad at yourself for being down, you're just only making the whole experience much more difficult, rather than simply acknowledging, I'm really upset, and I'm really upset because this was meaningful for me, and it's okay to be upset, and no feeling is final. And we learn to, with our mindfulness practice, kind of ride those feelings like waves, ups and downs. They come and go. The good ones are temporary, the bad ones are temporary. So then we're becoming more self-aware, and ultimately then we become less reactive. So, you're in traffic, you're stuck at the red light, or whatever that little thing that might trigger you, you're able to find that pause before having the big reaction, before having the big emotions, saying something that you wish you could take back. We're able to cultivate that pause. So all of these things are based on many years of research. There's about 30 years of research now about the benefits of mindfulness. And again, it's the area of my own research through my PhD right now. And that goes back to a guy named Jon Kabat-Zinn. Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn was a molecular biologist who then practiced mindfulness meditation himself, started, studying it scientifically. And he has since founded the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, and is kind of considered in many ways like the father of mindfulness. So, which leads me into neuroplasticity. So our brain's ability to change and grow and reorganize, and change shape and function and all that kind of stuff, it's called neuroplasticity. So it's basically our brain's ability to adapt and grow. So we can train our brains to be more mindful. And when we do that, we're actually remodeling the physical structure of our brain. So going back again, and if anybody wants me to send this out, so, if you wanted to look him up, this guy, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, he's kind of the first person that started doing this, doing the scans and really getting that research that shows it takes about 8 weeks. But that's when the statistically significant changes occur. You consistently practice mindfulness for 8 weeks. The gray matter density changes, the amygdala changes, the physical structures of our brain change. And those physical structures are related to things like processing, self-awareness, compassion, all these good positive benefits. But again, it takes time. It's not a magical cure. You get out what you put in. So mindfulness is best strengthened by a regular meditation practice. And meditation can be a bit of an intimidating term. I know personally 10, 12 years ago when I first got into this field, I did not think that meditation was something for me. I thought it was for, people sitting on a mountaintop, in complete silence for days on end, or, everyone has these ideas in their head of what it is. But It's really an accessible practice, and we're going to get into it now just in a minute or two, but it teaches us that everything is temporary. So I've already touched on this a little bit. And of course, we hear this all the time when we're having a rough period, or you think about the pandemic for the past 2 years. How often have we said to ourselves or said to other people, trying to be comforting, this too shall pass, which is true. However, we often forget that everything is temporary also applies to the good. So sometimes we miss the present moment, and we miss the magic of the present moment because we are elsewhere. We're in planning mode, we're worrying, we're distracted, we're trying to worry about what comes next, that we miss the magic of the present moment. So the people we love, the things we love, our pets, everything is temporary. So it's really about seizing the present moment and being fully attentive to all the moments of our lives. So, not being distracted on our cell phones all the time, which we're all guilty of these days. It's quite hard to get off our cell phones, really. But it's about being present for the people we love, for ourselves, and really taking advantage of that. So it invites us to slow down, to breathe, and to just take a little reset. So there are formal ways to practice meditation, which we're going to do in a moment: yoga, breath work, therapy. There are also informal ways to practice. If meditation is not your jam, if you do this today and you're like, I did not like that, I don't want to do that again, that is completely okay. It's not for everybody, but simply slowing down, doing one thing at a time with all your attention, taking a little digital detox. Doesn't even need to be a full day. Maybe just while you eat, or leaving the phone out of the room before you go to bed, or not getting on the phone first thing in the morning. Could be journaling, having a gratitude practice, simply noticing something that you're grateful for at the end of each day, something that went well. On the good days, it'll be pretty easy to find something you're grateful for. On the difficult days, it will be a bit harder sometimes, but there's always something. Even if it's a snuggle with your pet, your health, your cup of coffee, we can always find that one thing. And if we kind of cultivate that attitude, we're able to be more present to the good things. And then we can even just apply a grounding exercise to an everyday activity. So something like showering or eating that we're doing anyway, or washing the dishes, for example, you can be mindful during that practice. So, if you're in the shower, what does the water temperature feel like? What does is it hot? Is it cold? What is the sensation of the water? What is the smell? What is the experience you're having? So if you're taking a, 5-minute shower, 10-minute shower every day, you could use that as your practice. It doesn't have to be super formalized to reap some of those benefits that I touched on. So as I said, there are tons of, benefits. So my master's research was in mindfulness for anxiety, which it's very helpful for mental health. My PhD research is now more about mindfulness as a pain management strategy. So for physical pain, people that live with chronic pain. So there's a variety of ways we can use it. I do mindfulness with athletes. I just left the Growlers at, I guess if some of you are in Ottawa, you don't know what that is, but the local hockey team, I do mental performance mindfulness training with them every week. And it really has all these good benefits, but we only get those good benefits if we're consistent. But being consistent can just be as simple as a couple minutes a day to start and build that habit. So if we learn to think about it more as a lifestyle rather than something we have to do. So just being present, even something like eating your meal without any distractions. What are the tastes, the textures, the smell, and truly giving yourself the chance to enjoy your food. It can really be that simple. And then ultimately, I hope the thing that you take away from this today is that our breath is always available to us as an anchor, as a safe haven, as a place to reset when things get scary, when things get overwhelming, when things, the world sometimes feels like it's spinning too fast. The news cycle is heavy right now, that we can tune into ourselves and use the breath as a tool that's always available. It's totally free and it's always with us. So it allows us to reconnect with ourselves and come out of that, autopilot, that stress, that anxiety, although, some of that more uncomfortable stuff. So now I'm going to guide you through a quick practice. So I'm very aware of time. It's 2:15, so we don't have too much time. So it'll be a short one, but it'll give you a nice little taste. So I invite you to take a few moments here to get comfortable. So you can see I'm sitting in a computer chair. You could be sitting in a chair, on a couch, whatever, position works for you. Just taking a moment to find a posture where you can hopefully find some stillness for the next, maybe 10 minutes or so. And just starting to land here. If it feels supportive for you, I invite you to close your eyes. You can just begin to softly shut them, especially if this is new for you. Having the eyes closed can allow us to really turn inward. Just beginning to notice the presence of sounds around you, maybe sounds within the room you're in, other places, out on the road, traffic. Maybe you can hear the rain. Noticing the presence right now of temperature. Does the skin feel cold, warm? Just giving yourselves a couple moments to land here. Allowing our minds to settle, allowing the body to let go of muscular control. So we want the torso to be upright, but not rigid. Belly is fully relaxed here. Let's deepen the breath and take a nice deep inhale through the nose here together. Can release it through the mouth. Let's take another one like that, maybe inhaling for a count of 5. And releasing. One more, last one like that at your own pace here, making it maybe your biggest breath of your day so far. Letting it go. And from here, allowing your breath to fall into its own natural rhythm. So we're not trying to control it. We're not trying to manipulate the breath in any way. Just noticing how the body feels when you breathe in and out. We're often so busy, so preoccupied that we don't even notice that we're breathing and how that feels in our body. Allowing the shoulders to relax down away from the ears, arms falling wherever feels comfortable, supportive, maybe in the lap. Just continuing to breathe here. From here, guiding attention now up from your shoulders into your head, checking in with your jawline. Can you soften your mouth? Relax your tongue. Nobody can see you. You can even try letting your mouth hang open a teeny tiny bit here. Noticing how this prompts your cheekbones to relax. The space around your eyelids. A softening through the eyebrows. Releasing any unnecessary holding through the forehead. Anything that might feel heavy, any tension, whether that's physical tension, emotional tension. And just breathing into this newfound spaciousness that we're cultivating here together. And for the next few minutes, knowing that you are completely safe to be yourself, completely supported and grounded here in this moment to be exactly as you are, releasing the need to present yourself in any particular way, releasing the need to be on, giving yourselves full permission to just be, not trying to get anywhere, not trying to do anything. Just noticing each inhale and exhale. Imagining maybe it's the first time you've ever noticed what a breath feels like. The subtle expansion and contraction of the chest with each passing breath. A slow opening of the heart space. Widening of the collarbones. On your next inhale, I invite you to bring to mind an image of yourself. It can be any age, any context, any place. So holding this image in your mind here and really imagining the details. What would you be wearing? What's your facial expression like? And from this place of compassion, silently repeating to yourself, may I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May my life unfold with ease. Allowing this exercise to inspire your next inhalation, beginning to once again deepen the breath here a little bit, deeper in through the nose. You can release it through the mouth. One more time like that at your own pace, in through the nose. And then releasing through the mouth. And then once you're ready, you can start to wiggle your fingers. Roll out the wrists, the ankles. Might feel nice to roll out your shoulders. And then in your own time, there is no rush here. You can blink the eyes open, giving yourselves a moment or two to kind of transition back into more of an alert state. It might feel nice to reach the arms up high above the head. Great opportunity. I don't know if you saw, I'm wearing my favorite Amanda Gorman shirt for International Women's Day, a woman that I admire. So in summary, mindfulness is very gentle. You just need to practice a little tiny bit each day to really get these benefits that I've talked about. And it's about checking in with ourselves, noticing how we're feeling without judging ourselves for it, about befriending our experience and letting our breath be our first response in times of difficulty or when things feel a bit big. So I'm going to leave you all, I'm aware that it's cutting it close there, with a quote that I really, really like. It's from Susan David, who's a prof at Harvard. She's written a bunch of great best-selling books, and it's tough emotions are a part of our contract with life. You don't get to have a meaningful career or raise a family or leave the world a better place without stress and discomfort. Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. I love that. I think that sums up the mindfulness practice really nicely. It's really about making space for the uncomfortable. The uncomfortable is inevitable, but we can practice befriending it and making space for it. So I think I went a couple minutes over. Thank you for having me today. It's been such a pleasure. I hope it was supportive, and now I look forward to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm feeling very zen after that. Thank you so much for guiding us in that practice. I love that quote that you ended with to really help us understand that. I love that the cost of admission, you know, the stress and discomfort that we all experience in life, especially right now, is part and parcel of life. And all we can do is do our best to cope. And you really guided us to learn how to improve that coping through mindfulness. And thank you very much for sharing that with us. All right, so now we'll turn it over to Amber, who is going to take a look and announce our second winner. And this is for our $30 Sephora gift card.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassandra. And thank you, Julie. That was a great mindfulness session and really will need it for sure. So thanks to everyone that commented below. Our lucky winner for the $30 Sephora gift card is Raina Young. So congrats, Raina. I'll be in contact with you shortly by messenger. Awesome. And I'll turn it back to you, Cassandra. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is Cailyn. So Cailyn is a fifth-year behavioral neuroscience honor student at Memorial University, and in undergraduate research assistant with the Behavioral Medicine Center. She's been a volunteer with ILM since 2019 and recently became the first NL channel lead in the summer of 2021. Her battle with mental illness sparked her interest in mental health advocacy and education, and she hopes to pursue a career in clinical psychology research. Firsthand experience with the inefficiencies of the mental health system has influenced her to discover mental wellness practices such as self-care and self-compassion. Cailyn will be speaking about her journey with the mental health system and non-traditional self-help resources for students. Well, now welcome, Cailyn.
Hi, excuse me, can you guys hear me? Okay, great. I'm gonna try and share my screen. Hopefully this works. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay, I'm gonna try and do full screen. Okay, how does that look? Okay, great. Okay, so hi everyone. Sorry, I'm just getting over COVID, so if my voice starts to like crack, that's why. So my name's Cailyn. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I really appreciate being given the platform to speak about something that I'm very passionate about. So just to give a brief overview of who I am and like a little bit of my background. So I am a fifth-year behavioral neuroscience honors student. I'm hoping to be accepted to clinical psychology. It would be the goal to be accepted in the fall, but usually it takes a couple tries to get in. So in the future, and then I'm hoping to do clinical psychology research. I'm also a volunteer, so I volunteer with a lot of mental health organizations around my community. So obviously the I Love Me campaign, and then I also volunteer with Anxiety Canada, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and then I'd consider myself a mental health advocate, and I am doing some mental health research with the Behavioral Medicine Center as an undergraduate research assistant. So what I'm going to be speaking about today is just sort of my journey with mental health and sort of my battle with mental illness, what sort of experiences I had with the mental health system and some of the inefficacies of the mental health system that I'm sure anyone who has ever had to experience mental illness has unfortunately probably had the same experiences as me. And then I'm going to sort of go into some of the things that I used to sort of get better and feel better, and the things that I used during my journey of wellness, I like to say. So actually I'm gonna go back. So I guess throughout my whole childhood, I was a pretty anxious child. And I think I was always sort of wrote off as being high strung or a perfectionist. And I think everyone kind of just, no one really took me seriously, and no one really recognized that I was suffering from severe anxiety as a child. Yeah, so it was hard growing up and not recognizing and not being able to put, I guess, a word to what I was experiencing. And yeah, and then it wasn't really until my last year of high school where it kind of took a turn for the worst. So I was actually in a car accident. It was a pretty bad car accident with my best friend, and that was going into my final year of high school. And immediately after the car accident, I actually was okay. I wasn't feeling completely myself, but I wasn't experiencing the severe anxiety that I would come to experience. So it was about a week after that I started experiencing really, really bad anxiety, really bad intrusive thoughts. So intrusive thoughts can be violent, sexual, religious, existential, basically about anything. And those were what I was experiencing. And I really had no word to describe them. Like I had no idea what they were. I thought I use this term, like I thought I was going crazy, and now I hate that term because it's just super stigmatizing. But yeah, so I was experiencing really bad anxiety, but I was also experiencing some physiological symptoms, so like brain fog, headache, balance issues. And so long story short, I came to be diagnosed with post-concussive syndrome. However, what really lingered was the anxiety and the kind of spiral into OCD. And so that's what I've been struggling with for, well, not anymore, but I did struggle for a while with anxiety and OCD, really bad intrusive thoughts. And so I just kind of like to share my story. So if anyone out there is experiencing intrusive thoughts, I felt so alone when I was going through that. So I hope you know that you aren't alone and someone else is going through the same thing as you. Yeah, so then sort of trying to get myself better and dealing with the mental health system, there's obviously a lot of issues that I'm sure we all are aware of, but just some of the barriers that I face. So just first off, where to find help. Like I had no idea who to ask. I had no idea that you could go into a doctor's office and say, hey, I'd really like to see a therapist. I didn't even really know that what therapists were at the time, because mental health really wasn't something that was spoken about during my childhood. So yeah, just like where to find help, and then stigma and lack of education. So I think this is a huge one, especially with OCD and intrusive thoughts. So they're very stigmatized. And I think, well, when we think of OCD, I think a lot of us think of the cleanliness intrusive thoughts. So I have to make sure my hands are clean, or the hand washing, or the checking. But there's actually a lot more to OCD, and there's a lot more obsessions and intrusive thoughts that you can experience. And I really think there is a lack of education, not only in the public, but also with clinicians and physicians as well. So that was really hard. And that kind of led into not being taken seriously. So I can remember, I ended up going to the emergency room like 5 different times, just saying like, I think I'm literally going crazy. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. Can someone help me? And no one would take me seriously. I can remember doctors would walk into the room and hand me Xanax, just kept handing me like different types of benzodiazepines. And I was like, this isn't helping. Like, I really need some sort of long-term treatment. So yeah, so not being taken seriously. And then also the financial part. So anyone who's seen a therapist or a clinical psychologist or a counselor has probably felt, I guess, the pressure of like the financial side of it. So your insurance, or my personal insurance, only covers some portion of therapy sessions. And I think that's the case with a lot of people. And these can become super expensive. And I wasn't in a sort of financial position to be paying for long-term therapy. And then also wait lists. So I think I remember, in order to I think I was put on a wait list for like 3 years, and it was like until the point I was suicidal was when I was actually taken seriously and I guess kind of moved up in the wait list to the point where I could actually see a therapist. So wait lists were a huge thing that I dealt with as well. Yeah, so those were kind of the barriers I faced. And now I just kind of want to talk about some of the things that I did to find support. And I feel like it's important to kind of share this because if anyone was like me, I had no idea where to find support for what I was going through, and I felt extremely alone. So I had no idea that you can just go to your general practitioner or your family doctor and ask for a referral. So you can say like, this is what I'm struggling with right now, and if you can offer me a referral, that would be great. Or you can ask them for medication if that's something that you want to look into as well. And then looking online. So I had no idea that you can actually look online for therapists and call them up that way. I had no idea that that was an option. And then there's also, I mean, for students at least, there's programs on campus. So for example, Mun Minds is an organization that I volunteer with now, and they have a peer support program. So there's a lot of, I guess, sort of options that are not exactly therapy, but similar that you can avail to that are free on your campus. And peer support is one of those. So just talking to another student about some emotional issues that you might be going through. And then accommodations as well. So accommodations were a huge deal for me. So asking the disability center at MUN if I could have extra time on tests and midterms and extra time for some assignments, and also talking to your profs ahead of time and saying like, this is what I'm dealing with right now. Can I have an extension? Like, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for accommodations. And then also crisis helplines. So those were a huge thing for me as well. I don't know how many times I called a crisis helpline. And at first I almost felt embarrassed to do so and felt like I was a burden, but they're really there for a reason, and they're there for you to avail of. And then this is what I really like. So technology was a huge thing for me as well, especially the ones that were free. And I don't know if one of my pictures isn't loading. Oops. Okay. Yeah, so there's so many apps out there that are free. Some you can pay for, but the ones I'm going to talk today about are mostly free. So first, there's Anxiety Canada's Mind Shift CBT app. So there's so many different resources on this app. So there's guided meditation. There's actually like anxiety plans, so you can kind of work through your own CBT therapy. What else? There's also some peer support, so you can contact people who you can contact peers who might be experiencing the same thing as you. And then 7 Cups Counseling, that's another peer support app. So that's just talking to someone who is obviously not a trained mental health professional, but they're somewhat trained to deal with emotional issues that you might be going through at the time. And they're really just there to listen and respond and feel like you're not alone. And then there's also Headspace, and I love Headspace because it has so many different types of guided meditations. So there's guided meditations for forgiveness and sleep and self-love and letting go. So there's lots of different types of meditation and that I wasn't even aware of that existed, like forgiveness meditation. So that's a really cool app as well. And then there's No OCD, and this is specifically for people who struggle with OCD. You can connect with others and sort of share your story. And I found that really helpful because at the time, again, like I said, I felt so alone, and I felt like no one else was experiencing what I was going through. And I thought I was the only person on the planet that was experiencing intrusive thoughts the way that I was. So I really like that app too. And then the ILM app was actually just recently introduced to me by a friend. It's actually an app that will send you positive affirmations throughout the day. And it's really, really nice. I can see now if I get them like every I think it's like once an hour from the hours of like 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I can actually pull one up now. So if you guys can see this, they just send you like little notifications. So this one says, I attract love, health, and happiness into my life. And so I really like just receiving those throughout the day. And then I think this image isn't working, but it's called Well Track, and it's basically it's like a daily tracker app. So you can track your mood, how much water you take, what you've ate, if you've ate 3 meals a day, your sleep. So all those different things. And that was really nice because I could track what I was doing that day. And if I wasn't feeling nice, I could actually go back and look and say, okay, maybe this is why I wasn't feeling my best that day, or this is why I was having a good day. So those are all the apps that I find really beneficial. And there's lots more, but those are the main ones. And then finally, practicing self-care and self-compassion. And so finding the I Love Me campaign was a huge influence on this for me, because I had no idea what self-care was before I joined the group. I had no idea that you should be taking time every day to do something nice for yourself. And I had no idea that you didn't have to be constantly working hard, and you can actually step back and I don't know, just even be proud of yourself for what you've accomplished. So finding I Love Me was huge for that. So one of the things that I've learned to do is taking breaks. And I feel like Cassandra and Julia probably touched a lot on these already, but these are the ones that I find really helpful. So learning to take breaks. So like I said, growing up as like a super anxious child, and I was very perfectionist. I felt like I constantly had to be working and striving to do better. And I never knew how to take breaks and just let myself be calm. And then also taking my medication. So at first I was super embarrassed that I had to be on medication. And I think a lot of people kind of resonate with that as well. But taking your medication is a form of self-care and self-compassion. Also like scheduling regular doctor's appointments and showing up to therapy sessions. So those are also forms of self-care. Keeping a detailed schedule, that's huge for me as well, because I feel like with anxiety comes a lot of brain fog and losing track of thoughts, and your mind is constantly on the go all the time. So keeping a detailed schedule is really helpful, especially with school, when school becomes busy. And then getting in touch with nature. So I'm not huge on exercising. I don't really like to go to the gym. I'm not super into doing workouts and stuff, but a way I found to move my body was getting in touch with nature. So going for nature walks, getting outside, walking my dogs. And I think that was also sort of a form of mindfulness as well. So just feeling the cold air coming into my lungs, listening to the sounds of the woods when I was outside. So that was really helpful as well. And then saying no. I think Cassandra mentioned how you can't do everything. And I always felt like I had to. And I always felt like I needed to say yes to everything, and I needed to go out with my friends every time they were hanging out, and everything that came up at work I needed to say yes to. But I really learned that being able to recognize your limits and taking a step back and saying, you know what, I can't handle that this week, is super beneficial as well. And then practicing mindfulness. So obviously Julie walked us through that one. So practicing mindfulness was super helpful for me. And I think at the beginning it was hard, and I didn't really understand why I was practicing mindfulness. But as I continued with it, I noticed throughout the days I would start to recognize and be able to kind of step back and recognize that, oh, I'm having these thoughts right now. Maybe I should get up and do something, or stay busy to try and stop those thoughts from sort of taking over and spiraling. And then also helping others. So I find this really beneficial as well. So just like right now, like just sharing my story and sharing with others what helped me feel better. And volunteering is a huge part of that as well. I volunteer with a lot of, like I said, mental health organizations. So I find that really helpful. Yeah, and those are all the things that help me. And that's really all I have for you guys today. If anyone has any questions, you can always feel free to reach out and get in touch through my email. And yeah, I just want to say thank you again, Amber and Cassandra, for putting this all together. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Cailyn. That was really helpful, really insightful. I really appreciate you walking us through your personal experience with the barriers within the mental health system. And I think that, a lot of the elements that you have touched on are very real and very true for a lot of people, and especially a lot of young people, as you were saying, that experience of being misunderstood, and then the barriers that come with accessing help when you're not being taken seriously. I think that's really, really important to speak to and to talk to each other about and to learn about. So thank you for being vulnerable enough to open up about your experience. And it's beautiful to hear your journey and to hear what helps you be strong and what inspires you. And the tips that you shared, I think, will be helpful for everybody. And some of those apps sounded amazing, so I'm curious to check those out myself. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our speaker series. So we'll start to wrap up for today. So thank you everybody for joining us today and opening your hearts to us with the intention of growing in your own mental health and self-love journey. We hope that you found our series helpful today. We move forward today in support of women's mental health and a collective commitment to support and be inclusive of each other as women and as people. Thank you so much for sharing a small part of your Women's Day with us today. We celebrate all the women today who are listening in and all of the incredible women who support and volunteer their time within our campaign. We send our thanks, and we embrace you all from a distance, and we send you just great, loving, positive vibes today. And so please stay in touch with us on Instagram, on our Facebook page at ILM Campaign, or send us an email if you have any questions about today's presentations or volunteering with our campaign or getting our programming into your setting. You can send us an email at hello@ilmcampaign.com. And so today's event, as I had said, it is recorded, and so that will be up on Facebook later today, and it will also be uploaded soon on our YouTube channel if you'd like to take a look or share this with people in your life. So thank you. I think that's everything. Anything else, Amber, that you want to share?
I think that's all. It was great, and thank you all for viewing it. I know we had a lot of people on Facebook Live, so that was excellent. And yeah, happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Happy International Women's Day. Have a good rest of your day.